Well, good evening, Cedar Rapids. It's great to be here. I want to thank Dan. I think we also, where's Adrian Dickey? He's been at a bunch of stuff today. Where are you at? All right, thank you. Thanks so much. And it's really exciting to be here because I'm proud to be able to stand here and let you know that our great American comeback will begin when we send Joe Biden back to his basement in Delaware. Spends a lot of time as president on vacation. We might as well make it permanent and let him stay. I am excited to be in Iowa because I think that if you look at what we've done in Florida, we've seen a lot of the same bold policies instituted here in Iowa. And that's a testament to the legislators who've worked hard over these recent years, and it's a testament to your governor, Governor Reynolds, who has led. People would sometimes ask me, why aren't other states doing what Florida's doing? We're so excited. I said, Iowa's doing what Florida's doing. And so people started to really catch on. I get attention just because the media is always attacking me. So people are always talking about Florida. But the reality is Iowa's really set a great standard. People had said that all the success in Iowa with these great conservative policies makes Iowa the Florida of the North. Well, I don't know. I've been looking at it. It's pretty impressive. Maybe we're the Iowa of the South, but these elites in D.C. could learn a thing or two about what Iowa's done and the common sense and the conservative values, but instead, Biden and his crew are intent to plunge this country into the abyss. We are going in the wrong direction as a country now. Are you happy with having an open border where millions of illegals are pouring in? Are you happy having an economy where inflation has reduced our standard of living? Are you happy that Biden is trying to stop us from being energy independent and not even producing our own? Are you upset that we have a bureaucracy that is totally out of control? I mean, just think about how this has been weaponized. They will go after people who don't think like them. If Hunter were a Republican, he would have been in jail a long time ago, and we all know that. Are you happy with seeing cities across this country overwhelmed with crime? No. Are you happy to see institution after institution be infected with the woke mind virus? Are you happy that the federal government used its authority to try to impose a biomedical security state on this country with mandates and lockdowns? And if it wasn't for states like Florida and Iowa, they would have gotten away with it, but we had the gall to say no, not on our watch. And are we all, especially on the heels of Memorial Day, are we all revolted by how we lost 13 service members in Afghanistan due to the ineptitude of Joe Biden as commander-in-chief? Yes. So we have a situation where the political elite in this country are detached from the wishes of everyday hardworking Americans. Listen to this stat. 5 of the 7 wealthiest counties in the United States of America are suburbs of Washington, D.C. I can tell you they're not producing very much in Washington, D.C. besides mountains of debt and loads of hot air. So why they are wealthy in that part of the country is because our political system rewards people who are connected to the ruling class, and they reward them at the expense of people who are out in the country doing it the right way. They want to impose their agenda on us. They are not trying to create an agenda that represents us or represents our values. And all this means is that our country is now in a state of decline. The good news is I think American decline is not inevitable. I think it is a choice. It is a choice that we will make as a people, particularly in this upcoming election. I think we have a chance to choose a better path. And if we choose a better path, we can have a revival of the greatness of America. We can revitalize this country, and we have a responsibility to do it. We need to restore sanity to this society. If you look at the stuff that's going on, it is absolutely crazy, the things we've seen. First of all, fiscal sanity. They have printed trillions of dollars over the last few years, borrowed, spent trillions of dollars, and all it's done is driven up inflation, reduced the standard of living for American families, and now you have Biden trying to neuter our energy capacity, which will make things even worse. And in terms of this debt deal, what I can tell you is this. Our country was careening towards bankruptcy before this debt deal, and it will be careening towards bankruptcy after this debt deal. It does $4 trillion in additional debt in less than 2 years. It locks in the inflated levels of spending that they've done since COVID, and they really continue to use COVID as a pretext to spend more money that we don't have. And it even keeps 98% of Biden's 87,000 IRS agent expansion. So that is not solving any problems whatsoever. I can tell you in Florida, we run budget surpluses. We have one of the lowest per capita debt ratios in the entire country. Our economy, if we were our own country as Florida, our economy would be the 13th largest in the world, and yet our debt with a $1.2 trillion economy in Florida, our debt's only $17 billion. Can you imagine if the federal debt was at such a small ratio of our overall economy? Instead, our national debt is significantly more than the entire value of the American economy. So that insanity cannot continue and us remain a vibrant country. We also have to understand restoring sanity means every institution in our country cannot be going on these ideological joyrides. We need to make sure that merit and achievement trump identity politics. We also need to restore a sense of normalcy to our communities. It is not normal to have millions of illegal aliens pouring into communities all across our country, to have drugs pouring in across our country because of the dereliction of duty of the commander-in-chief. It is not normal to have inmates running the asylum in American cities, where we have prosecutors get elected, oftentimes funded by people like George Soros, who will go into office and refuse to enforce laws that they don't like, and they let criminals roam the street, and average people are victimized. We also have to reestablish integrity in our institutions of American life. I'm a Navy veteran, had served a tour in Iraq, and it was something that is, what's that? That's right. It was something that I respected all the services, and I appreciated everyone who served. I was in a situation where, growing up, I was a blue-collar kid. My mom was a nurse. My dad worked to put ratings devices on the television sets for the Nielsen television ratings company, and I was never handed anything. I was always told, you're not entitled to anything. You have to earn it. And so I worked minimum wage jobs, put myself through school. For years and years I did that, partially because I actually believed in America, if you work hard, that's the way to get ahead. I'm not sure that that's as true now as it was when I was growing up. We need to make sure that that's true, because that's really the essence of who we are. And I put myself in a position where, I got education, I had degrees, I had the ability to earn a lot of money. And I had never had money before, but September 11th happened, I'm going through this, and I felt the responsibility to serve. It's an all-volunteer force, but you step up when the country's going through a lot. So I did, and I can tell you that even though I made way less money than I would have, the satisfaction that you get wearing the cloth of your country and serving with fellow patriots, well, that's a satisfaction that money just can't buy. And so I look back. I look back at that with a lot of fondness, and I know veterans in other eras look back and they're proud of their service, they're proud of their patriots who've served, and that's how it should be. Well, now you have veterans that will come up to me and they question whether they would want their kids or their grandkids to even join the military anymore. Why? Because you have woke ideology being put in. You know, in the Navy, they're doing things like gender pronouns and drag queens for recruiting. You're talking about things like global warming and really being detached from the core mission of what our services are supposed to be doing. And that has caused, of course, warriors to leave the service. It's caused recruiting to plummet. When I was in Iraq, you would have people that would sign up knowing they would get sent to Fallujah or Ramadi or some of these places. Even when it wasn't going well, people were willing to raise their hand and serve. Now, the recruiting is abysmal because people want to join something that's meaningful to them. They want to join something where they can be part of pursuing a common mission. They don't want to be caught up in all these side issues. So I think we need to make sure that we restore the military to its proper function. All this politics will be out on day one when I get in there. We also need to restore integrity to our constitutional system. Our founding fathers created 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. The people that you elect are the ones that are supposed to make the rules that govern our society. If you don't like what they do, you have the ability to send them packing and elect someone else who will do a better job. Well, what we've been doing in these last few decades is some of the most important issues facing our society get resolved not in the halls of Congress, but by nameless, faceless bureaucrats who are issuing sweeping rules that have the effect to transform our society and transform the American economy. We need to reconstitutionalize this government. No social or economic transformation without representation. We return the government to its rightful owners, we the people of the United States. Our national affairs need to be guided by the pursuit of truth. Truth must be our foundation. You know, people can say what they want, they can throw up smoke screens, they can create diversions, they can tell lies, they can engage in deceit, but north is still north. And you can tell me that 2 + 2 = 5, but I know that north is still north. And we have to have truth as the foundation of everything we do. It's not my separate truth or your separate truth. There is a truth, and that was what we will be grounded in. We also need to ensure that common sense is no longer an uncommon virtue in our society. Let's make sure that the things we're doing pass the smell test with the average person. It didn't during COVID for a lot of this stuff. One of the reasons Florida did good is we were just relying on common sense and doing things that we knew would work. And so there's a lot to be done. But I think the good news is a state like Florida, a state like Iowa, proves that it can be done. This is not a lost cause. Yes, we're behind. We've got a lot to do, but we can do it. And in Florida, we chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. We held the line when freedom itself was hanging in the balance during the COVID-19 pandemic. We chose freedom over Fauciism because we... And when you're in an executive position, at the end of the day, you got to be right on policy, of course. I mean, we see someone like Biden doing bad policies. It's destructive. But being right on policy is not enough. You also have to demonstrate leadership when you're in those positions. And so when COVID was raging, Florida made the decision we were going to chart a different course. We were going to protect people's rights. We were going to protect people's jobs, we were going to protect people's business, and we were going to protect the ability of our kids to get an in-person education. And those were positions that caused me to receive an immense amount of blowback from media, from left, from bureaucrats, and even from some Republicans. And I was getting hammered day after day after day. And a lot of my supporters would be like, hey, you're getting killed out there. You may need to reverse course, otherwise you're not going to be long for this world politically. And you know what? That may have been true. No one really knows how these things work out. But as a leader, you can't put short-term political calculations ahead of the interests of the people that you represent. I was more concerned, I knew I needed to be more concerned with saving the jobs of the people I represented than trying to protect my own job. And if by doing what I thought was right, if I was able to look in the mirror and know that the decisions I made were in the best interest of the state, if it didn't end up working out for me politically, well then so be it. That's life. That's the cost of leadership, that you're willing to pull the trigger and make the tough decisions when it's not easy. I can tell you also that leadership is not about entertainment. It is not about building a brand. It is not about virtue signaling. Leadership is about producing results for the people that you represent. And Iowa has produced results, and Florida has produced results. And here are just some of the results that we've been able to produce in these last few years. We have banned land purchases by the CCP in the state of Florida. No farmland, no land near military bases, nothing. We have signed legislation to kneecap ESG in the state of Florida. No ESG in the pensions, no social credit scores, and no woke banking discriminating against conservative Floridians. We have enacted the Heartbeat Bill, which are the strongest pro-life protections in the modern history of Florida. And yes, as our man said, we are also embracing the importance of fatherhood in the state of Florida. We work on our initiative with Tony Dungy, who was a coach for the Colts and for the Bucks. He lives in Tampa, and he's got charities that he runs called All Pro Dads that we've worked with before we did the bigger initiative. And Tony will tell the story that when he was coach at Tampa, he's a devout Christian. He wanted to go minister in the prison. So he went to minister in the prison in Florida. And he came out of that and he said, you know, what I realized is none of them were in prison because they were poor, because of their race, or these other things. They were all in prison because not one of them had a father in the home growing up. And so if you have a father in the home, or even if you have a kid that has a mentor, somebody that takes an interest in their life, that could be the difference between them being a very productive citizen or ending up in jail or prison themselves. And so we understand the importance of that, and we understand our kids need it. And part of being family friendly is we understand that it's not always easy financially to be raising kids or even to be bringing kids into this world. And so we want to make sure, especially in an era of Biden inflation, that we're providing relief to Florida families. Now, we don't have an income tax in the state of Florida. Y'all should try it sometime. It's good. I know your governor's trying to get there. And so, we can't, there's no rates to cut there, so we try to figure out what can we do to make an impact. And so what we've done with our sales tax is we've permanently eliminated sales tax on every single baby item. No tax on cribs, on strollers, on diapers, on wipes, on clothes, none of it. You get to bring babies into this world tax-free in the state of Florida. And that's going to save parents. Trust me, the amount of diapers we went through with our 3 kids, that's a lot of money. You know, my wife, she's going to come up here and say a few things in a minute. We started as governor 2019 with a 2-year-old and a 9-month-old. You know, our kids now are 6, 5, and 3. So when I signed this into law, she said, that's a great bill. Why didn't you do that in 2019? That would have saved us a lot of money. Well, we didn't have Biden-inflation in 2019. That's why. So we're happy to stand with families there. We're also happy to stand with parents by enacting universal school choice, education savings accounts for every parent to send their kid to the school of their choice. When I became governor, we inherited a liberal state Supreme Court that was split 4-3, liberal to conservative justices. I have since been able to appoint a total of 7 conservative justices to the Florida Supreme Court, and we now have the most conservative state Supreme Court in the United States. We have fortified Second Amendment rights in Florida by enacting constitutional carry legislation. We've enacted tough on crime policies so that we make sure people are not getting out without having to post bail. We make sure that people are dealing fentanyl end up in prison for a long time. And we have now authorized the death penalty for pedophiles who prey on our youth. We also understand you're not going to have safe communities if you do not support the people that wear the uniform. And so we back the blue. We support the men and women of law enforcement. We don't defund the police in Florida. We back the police. And in fact, for the last 3 years, we have enacted $1,000 bonuses for every single sworn law enforcement officer and firefighter in the entire state of Florida. That's hundreds of thousands of people that have gotten checks. And we see how poorly they're treated, and the police are treated in New York and Chicago, these places. And so we said, you know what? You want to be appreciated? If you're qualified, come serve in Florida. And so anyone that we recruit from another state, on the first day, they get a $5,000 signing bonus because we back what they're doing. We've also led the fight against these progressive prosecutors funded by people like George Soros. When we had a prosecutor who said that he was not going to enforce laws in Florida that he didn't like, I removed him from his post. He is gone. We've enacted policies to fight illegal immigration, like banning sanctuary cities, cracking down on human smuggling, sending our National Guard to help with the border, and even transporting 50 illegal aliens to beautiful Martha's Vineyard. Florida is the first state, and I bet you Iowa will follow, Texas will probably follow, but we are the first state to formally and completely eliminate so-called DEI from our public university system. They say it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, but the way it's done, it really is ideology that's being imposed on the student body and on the professors. The way it's actually applied, DEI better stands for discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination, and that has no place in our public institutions. We have also led the way on election integrity. We have banned ballot harvesting in Florida. We've banned Zuckerbucks in Florida. We require voter ID in Florida. And if you look at the last two election cycles, 2020 and 2022, we're counting over 8 million votes by midnight on election night and producing results. Imagine that. We've also enacted the strongest protection for medical freedom, such as banning COVID shot mandates for school children, for anybody working in a job, banning vaccine passports, and even banning gain-of-function research. We're the first state to do that. But of all the things that we've done, and we've done more than that, I would say one of the things I'm most proud of is we've taken a very strong stand that the purpose of our schools is for education of our kids, not indoctrination of our kids. Parents' rights matter. The protection of our children matters. And we are going to make sure that we are standing with families in Florida. And part of the reason we do that is because when you're looking at issues like education, yes, you have to see them through the lens of the eyes of a governor because it's important for the state. But I also see them through the eyes of a father, of a 6, a 5, and a 3. And my wife and I, we very much care about the world that these kids are growing up in. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I didn't feel like watching a cartoon somebody was trying to shove an agenda down my throat. I didn't remember it. Certainly in school, we just did school. There were no other agendas being pushed, and that's changing now. And I think parents are having a more difficult time just raising their kids the right way, because it seems like everywhere you turn, something is happening to try to veer them off course. And so we're very sensitive to that. And so because she's here with us, I want to bring up our First Lady. Great mother, great wife, and a great First Lady of Florida. Here she is.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. That's awesome. Well, it's great to be in Iowa. It's great to fight with the governor. And frankly, it's great to fight with a lot of mamas across the country, because mamas are really fired up, I have to say, and grandmamas. By the way, when the governor was reelected, we did a big initiative in the state of Florida. We did a Mamas for DeSantis. And we said, we are going to sign up 1 million moms to support the governor. And we didn't meet our goal of 1 million moms. We actually signed up 1.1 million moms to support and reelect the governor, which was great. And by the way, we had a great contingencies of grandmoms, too, the villages. They were our huge stronghold. So it's not just the mamas, it's the grandmamas. But, you know, I heard a recurring theme. It was, you know, it's one thing when your policies come after me. It's another thing when you're coming after our children. That's when we start fighting back. And I think there are a lot of moms across the country and grandmoms who are going to sign up to support this governor because he is the one that's fighting to protect our children. So I'm happy to be here for a lot of reasons, one of which I'm very happy to talk to somebody older than the age of 5. So this is date night for us tonight, by the way, because we have our kids are being watched. Thankfully, Grandma's always on hand to be able to help us with that, which is such a blessing. But we have, as he mentioned, we have the 3 little ones. So we have 6, 5, and 3. Mamie, first baby born to a sitting governor in more than 60 years. She's the little Spitfire. She runs the place. Don't anybody tell you that it's the governor who's running the operation. It's our 3-year-old. By the way, if you're wondering, and I mentioned this yesterday, if I'm sounding a little hoarse, it's because I had a very long, in-depth conversation with that 3-year-old as to why we cannot color on the dining room table with permanent marker. You know, it's funny, you see these pens that the governor will use to sign various bills. Well, those permanent markers then come back and they all accumulate near the dining room table. And so we have tried to encourage them not to use those, whatever. And, you know, we also are very fortunate. We live in a great place, the governor's residence, but it's a little bit like living in a museum, right? So it's like that MasterCard commercial plays in my head. You get a bill at the end of his tenure, right? This costs this much to destroy Florida's irreplaceable history. This costs this much. This is priceless, right? So, you know, trying to corral small children has been a challenge, but it's also been a blessing, and it's one of the reasons why we fight so hard, because we're fighting for their future, and we're fighting for your children and your grandchildren's future. You know, I'm very proud. He was up here talking about all of the great things that he's accomplished in the state of Florida, and your governor has done a heck of a job. You know, but, and Kim is a good friend. She's awesome. You know, but here is why it matters, because so often, you see so many people who are running for elected office, especially in Washington. They say all of these wonderful things. They're going to go do this, they're going to go do that. And when they get up to places like Washington, D.C., they go rogue. They forget why they're there. They forget of the wishes of the people who put them in office, what they ultimately wanted them to do. They become listless vessels, bending in the wind, beholden to polls and politics, never delivering on those accomplishments on behalf of the people. What the governor shows is that when he says he is going to do something, check the record, he gets it done. What a concept. And he's also not afraid either. That's the other thing, because, you know, he has been attacked literally. Even before he was elected, he was being attacked. And during COVID, we turned on the TV, and every 5 minutes he was being attacked. And I honestly said, sometimes I worry if he's not being attacked, right? Like, are you doing the right things? But you know what? Even though he faced unrelenting attacks, he never backed down, he never cowered, he never changed, he never took the path of least resistance. You know, in watching in execution, that he fights and stands and defends what is right. So I'm excited for the journey ahead, and I'm honestly humbled and very honored to be a part of it. I mean, I'm having a lot of fun, I'm not gonna lie. Casey's is a great place. The breakfast pizza is literally good. I keep joking, I say, you know what? There must be something about the synergy, right, between the name Casey and Casey's being one of the best gas stations I've ever been to. You should ask him, he's a little bit of a gas station connoisseur. But we're having fun, and we're enjoying it, and we love the warm welcome, and we love just how nice everybody has been and so wonderful and appreciative of taking the time, because we know it's hard to take time away from your family. We did a FaceTime call, by the way, before we came out here with our 6-year-old and 5-year-old who were eating popsicles on the sofa, but that's okay. It was fine. It was all right. They had bowls, but you know, we understand that it's a sacrifice to be involved in politics and to make a difference. So honest to God, we do appreciate what you're doing, but I'm excited because we're going to protect and defend what it means to be an American, the idea of America. We're going to ensure that our children, and your grandchildren have the opportunity to live up to their God-given potential in America. And you know what? With this guy leading the helm, I can tell you we are going to show the world that America's best days are yet to come. So God bless you.
Best First Lady in all 50 states, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much. And it is really about the kids. It is about the rights of parents. And I think parents have the right to know what curriculum is being used in their kids' schools. And we've enacted policies to protect that right, to give parents the ability to review curriculum and review the textbooks and other books that are there. And part of the reason that was necessary is parents started finding out there's a lot of really inappropriate stuff that's being smuggled into our kids' classrooms nowadays. Pornography in like a 6th grade library. That was not there when I was a kid, and so now they're doing it. So obviously that's not appropriate, certainly not appropriate to use tax dollars to be doing that. And so parents now have the ability in Florida to blow the whistle. Now, when they do that, the media will create a narrative that somehow removing a pornographic book from like a 6th grade classroom is somehow akin to banning books, which it's not. I mean, you have to make decisions about curating books, which books are going to be, which are not. For every one book you have about George Washington, there's probably 20 that you could have, and you just make decisions. Doesn't mean you're banning the other 20 books. No, you're just curating. So the whole thing is a hoax, but we felt the need to push back on it. So we did a press conference a couple months ago, and we called the press conference Exposing the Book Ban Hoax. But before I spoke, before the parents spoke, we just played on a big TV screen the images from the books that the parents were actually objecting to. The local news stations had to cut their live feed because they said it was too graphic. Well, if it's too graphic for the 6 o'clock news, how is it okay for a 10-year-old school child? the media tried to do, and I think even most of these outlets, debunked this because it was so ridiculous, but they tried to create in Miami a poem ban hoax. And what happened was, and this had nothing to do with me, nothing to do with the state of Florida, there was a school in Miami-Dade that had a book of poems. I guess the poet was involved with Biden's inauguration, so I don't know. But it was a book of poems, and they decided that it was more appropriate in the middle school library than in the elementary school library, so they just moved the book, to the next library. And the media tried to say that somehow that was being banned because something like the state of Florida was doing. I mean, it was a total fabrication and a total hoax. And so literally the Miami-Dade school district's got to put out a statement saying nothing's been banned. We literally just moved it to middle school because we think that's more appropriate, at that grade level. But it's a lesson in the dishonesty of legacy media outlets. They want to create narratives to advance their agenda, but they don't care about the facts, and they're not going to try to inform you of the facts if it conflicts with their agenda. So we fight back on that. We also fight back on things like critical race theory, which we have eliminated in our K through 12 schools. We're not teaching kids to hate our country or to hate each other with your tax dollars. No, we're actually going to teach kids what it means to be an American. We're going to teach about the Constitution and teach about American civics so they have a foundation for being citizens of this republic. Florida's also taken a stand against the introduction of gender ideology in our schools. It is wrong for a teacher to tell a second grader that they may have been born in the wrong body or that their gender is a choice. And in Florida, that is not allowed to happen in our classrooms. Now, when we did that, the parents in Florida were thrilled because they just want kids, they want to focus on reading, writing, all that stuff. So the parents were thrilled. The left was not thrilled. And the media was not thrilled. And so they started piling on. They started to create narratives. They were trying to do whatever they can to smear the effort. But, that's kind of be expected. And so as we're getting ready to kind of go with this, all of a sudden, someone else wasn't happy with it. A company in Central Florida that you may have heard of called Disney. And Disney's view was that the bill should be stopped, that we should have somehow, that would be appropriate to have things like transgenderism taught to elementary school kids. That was their corporate position on that. And, the thing about Florida is they're really the 800-pound gorilla when it comes to Florida politics. Everything they've wanted really for decades, they pretty much end up getting until now, because there's a new sheriff in town. And we're not going to back down to a woke corporation. We fight back. And so we stood our ground, we signed the legislation, and, it's the type of thing where they've gone, I think, in a direction as a company that the founder of the company would not approve of. When you have executives of Disney on TV, on these Zoom calls, boasting that their company is trying to inject sexuality in the youth programming, that is patently unacceptable. The sexualization of children is wrong, and we stand against that. We stand for the protection of children. And I know there's some of these other Republicans who are taking Disney's side on this, and they're attacking me. But when it comes to the protection of children, we will never give an inch, because the safety of our children is of paramount importance, and on that issue, there can be no compromise. It's wrong for a swimmer to compete on the men's swim team for 3 years and then switch to the women's team and somehow win the national championship. That's taking away opportunities from girls and women athletes. As the parent of 2 daughters, I'm sensitive because I want my girls to have opportunities to compete with fairness and with integrity. But it also, when you crown a women's champion under those circumstances, you basically have organizations like the NCAA that are perpetuating a fraud, because it is not true that that was the women's champion. The best women's swimmer was the second place, who was a woman. And it's sad we even have to say this, but it's wrong for physicians to perform sex change operations on minors. That is mutilation. And when you do that in the state of Florida, you will not only lose your medical license, you will go to jail where you belong. So in Florida, we just stand for what's right. And when we tell you we do something, we get it done. And the results speak for themselves. Our state's the fastest growing state in the United States. We've led the nation in net in-migration, I think, every year since I've been governor. We were just ranked #1 in education by U.S. News and World Report. We're #1 for parental involvement in education. Our crime rate is at a 50-year low. And we have one of the lowest tax and debt per capita ratios anywhere in the country. And I think what that shows and those results show is, yes, it can be done. We can solve these problems. But two, when it comes to me, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm not just saying that because I'm telling you what you want to hear. If I don't think I can do it or it's not something I support, I don't go make idle promises. When I tell you I'm going to do something, you can take it to the bank. We are going to follow through, and we are going to get it done. So as president, I pledge to be an energetic executive that will take on all the big issues head on in a no-nonsense way. We will reverse Biden's economic policies that have caused inflation to go up and caused American families to struggle. We will liberate our domestic energy industry from his disastrous regulations, and we will open things up, and we will be better off as a result of it. Of course, we will reverse his border and immigration policies. Now, I gotta say though, I've been hearing about this border as a Republican my entire adult life. And Republicans have been going around saying they're gonna do all this with border and do that with immigration for years and years and years. When I'm president, we will finally be the administration to bring this issue to a conclusion. We are going to shut down the border. We are going to build a border wall. We're going to end mass migration, and we are going to hold the Mexican drug cartels accountable for the carnage that they are causing in this country. We also will bring about a reckoning, a needed reckoning, about the disastrous federal policies regarding COVID-19. Fauci policies were wrong. Fauci policies were destructive. And we must have accountability for those policies so that this never can happen in our country ever again. Because we understand that woke ideology represents a war on truth, we will wage a war on woke. We will never surrender to the woke mob, and we will leave the woke ideology in the dustbin of history where it belongs. We will revitalize our military. On day one, we will reverse all of Biden's politicized policies that are detracting from mission attainment, hurting recruitment. We will make sure that merit matters and that mission accomplishment matters. And I guarantee you, you will see people signing up to join in much greater numbers. And we need it. We need to have a strong military. Because when you're strong, bad people are much less likely to do bad things to us. It's the weakness that invites the aggression. So the way to stay out of war is to be strong so that you deter countries from even thinking about messing with us. And that's why when you look at threats on the horizon, we have to recognize our top threat is the Chinese Communist Party. That represents our most significant threat as Americans. So we need a strong military to deter China. We need to acknowledge that the elites in this country have sold out this country to Chinese for many, many decades. Yes, and some Americans got very rich, but it hollowed out our country. It's made China the world's leading manufacturing superpower. It's allowed them to build up their military. Now they have a leader, President Xi, who has very grand ambitions and wants to wield authority all around the globe. So this is really, really important, but we cannot let the 21st century end up becoming the Chinese century. It must be the American century. We need to take, and we will take, swift and strong action to reconstitutionalize this government and to bring the administrative state to heel once and for all. Now, this problem of this fourth branch of government is something that was not created overnight. It's the result of decades upon decades of congressional neglect, bureaucrats expanding their power, and it's not going to be solved overnight. It's going to require a president who is disciplined, a president that is focused day in and day out in unwinding this behemoth and restoring proper constitutional government and putting the people back in control. You can't be cowed by the left. You can't be cowed by the media when you're taking important, swift action. And you know, with me, you get a new FBI director on day one. That will happen. But you need to understand that in some of these important agencies like the DOJ, you need people in there that are going to be warriors. You need an attorney general that has a spine made of steel. Because if you're going in there and you're turning the place upside down and you're making the changes that need to be made, there's a lot of people that aren't going to like that. The left is not going to like that because that's their hobby horse. The media is not going to like it because, the media, they used to say that they speak truth to power. In reality, they defend the powerful. They defend the bureaucracy, and they defend the administrative state because that's who leaks to them. And so they're basically like the Praetorian Guard of the deep state. So you have to understand that when you're in there trying to reconstitutionalize the government, you're going to face an immense amount of blowback. They're going to smear you. There's going to be articles and hit pieces on TV. And you need an attorney general that's going to wear that like a badge of honor. Because if they're not coming after you, then you're not getting the job done. They only go after the people that they fear. And if you're getting the job done, that's when they're going to do it. In Florida, we have an attorney general named Dr. Joseph Ladapo. He's a really good guy. You should look into him. But he's like an anti-Fauci. Everything Fauci was saying, he was the opposite. And I told him, I said, look, taking those positions, they're going to fire at you because that's not the positions that these people want to see. And so just, stay strong, hold your ground. And it got to the point where I would see him and I'd be like, hey, Joe, I don't really know what you've been up to, but I see CNN is attacking you, so you must be doing a good job, because I know they wouldn't be doing that if you were not doing what we wanted you to do. So you need to have that frame of mind and to go in. And I think what's happened over the years, these Republicans get in there and they get too worried about being liked by people inside Washington. Guys, it's a swamp. You don't want them to like you. And this thing is so massive that you go in day one, you spit nails, day after day, you're working. It really takes 2 terms to be able to bring all this in for a landing. I think you can bring George Washington back from the dead, put him in. I don't know that he could get it done in just one term, because this has been built up over many, many decades. So it starts very strongly on day one, but we understand that this is something that's going to take a lot of time. And at the end of the day, if it were easy, somebody would have already done it. It's not going to be easy, but it is necessary, because I don't think you can have a viable constitutional government if the major power source in that government is not accountable to the people it purports to represent. So we are going to change that. Now, the Bible tells us that God prefers the humble to the proud, and you have to have humility when you're in an executive position, particularly like that of President of the United States. At the end of the day, you can have great policies, and we will. You can make great decisions, and we will. But this is a team effort, and you can't do it alone. You need a cadre of people who believe in the mission, who are going to be willing to sweat and toil to be able to accomplish the mission, and are not going to have their own agenda put forth ahead of your agenda. And in order to do that, you can't just recycle the same people who are in Washington, D.C. and live in the Beltway. And yes, look, I'm not saying you will not have anybody of there, but you need to have the vast majority of people who are serving in these important positions. And it's not just who the Attorney General is. Yeah, that's important. But you have so many other positions that you have to fill. And so I'm going to call on people all around the country to say, you may need to pick up your family for a few years, move to Washington, D.C., and serve in this government. Because for so long, this government, this bureaucracy, has imposed its will on us. It's about time we start imposing our will on it. And we need your help to be able to do that. So, and there's so much more that we'll do, and we'll be outlining a lot of important stuff over the coming months. But here's the thing. You can't do any of this stuff if you don't win the election. There is no substitute for victory. And we need to dispense with the culture of losing that's infected the Republican Party. Outside of Iowa and Florida and a handful of spots, we've had 3 disappointing election cycles in a row. And that's not going to cut it this time. We need the courage to lead, and we need the strength to win. And what I can tell you is, in Florida, I got elected in 2018 by 32,000 votes out of more than 8 million votes cast. And that really wasn't out of the ordinary for Florida. Most of the key races, governor races, presidential races, had been decided by 1 point in the previous election cycles. And I was actually told, hey, the state's evenly balanced. You get in as governor, don't rock the boat. Keep your head down, because you don't want to upset this political balance. And I understood that advice, but I rejected that advice because we got to be bold, and we were. But we showed leadership. We got things done. 4 years later, we didn't win by 32,000 votes. We won by over 1.5 million votes. The greatest Republican election victory in a governor's race in the history of the state of Florida. And it wasn't just about me. I had a responsibility as the top of the ticket to help our legislative candidates, to help our congressional, to help school board candidates. And so we were able to earn a supermajority of the Florida legislature. We were able to pick up 4 Republican members of the U.S. Congress, and we probably wouldn't have the majority if Florida had not done that. We were able to elect 29 new conservative school board members throughout the state of Florida, and they're making a big impact on all this. And for the first time since the Civil War era, there is not one single solitary Democrat elected to statewide office in the Sunshine State. That's what you call winning, and that's winning big. And I think that it's going to be a tough fight. I think it's going to require a lot of sacrifices. People like me are going to have to take arrows. Heck, people who just go and volunteer may take arrows. People that go to school board meetings nowadays are taking arrows. But I think we owe it to our kids and grandkids to give our best effort, to be standing for truth, and to carry on what the father of our country called the sacred fire of liberty. You know, coming off this past weekend, I think about going up to Washington, D.C. When I used to fly up there. And there was one route that you could take going into Reagan Airport that took you flush parallel to the National Mall. And so if you looked out the left side of the plane, you saw beautiful views, really up close and personal views of the Lincoln Memorial, the reflecting pool, the Washington Monument, all the other monuments, and even perched on the hill in the distance, the beautiful U.S. Capitol building. And it was a beautiful sight because it reminds you of the ideals and the principles that make us unique as Americans. I could tell you the tourists gawk. They love seeing it. It was a really neat thing. And I did too. But after doing that trip a few times, I figured out that the best monuments our country had were not out the left side of the plane, even though that was our national mall. Because if you were on the right side of the plane and you looked out those windows, you looked over the Potomac River, and you saw a series of monuments, very small, very nondescript, orderly arranged over the rolling hills of a place called Arlington National Cemetery. And it occurred to me that you can have great leaders like a Washington and a Lincoln. You can have a great Declaration of Independence, a great Constitution. You can have great ideals. But if you don't have people that are willing to put on that uniform, step up, risk their lives, and indeed, in some instances, give that last full measure of devotion, then none of that stuff's going to amount to very much. And so we owe it to the people that have sacrificed for us to make sure that we carry on the cause of freedom. I believe that we have it within our power to reverse our nation's decline. And my pledge to you is this. If you support me in the Iowa caucus, you will help me earn the Republican nomination. And if I receive that nomination, then you can set your clock to January 20th, 2025 at high noon, because on the west side of the Capitol, I'll have this left hand on the Bible, I will have this right hand in the air, and I will be taking the oath of office as the 47th president of these United States. No excuses. I will get the job done. Thank you. God bless you. I'm asking for your support. I'm asking for your vote. God bless you all. Thank you.